Hereby I open this academic ceremony at Maastricht University. My name is Ton de Goeie. I am the pro-rector of the ceremony and chair of the promotion committee. First of all, I would like to welcome Mrs. Carmen Torrejón Guirado, and she will defend in public her academic thesis, An Exploration of Factors Influencing Cannabis Use Among Andalusian Adolescents. Welcome all members of the degree committee, and in particular I would like to welcome not only our external guests, but in particular also the 4 supervisors sitting opposite to me, and from left to right. Professor Hein de Vries, he is Emeritus Professor of Health Communication at Maastricht University. Dr. Marta Lima Serrano, she is Senior Lecturer and Associate Professor at the Nursing Department at the University of Seville in Spain. The co-supervisor is Dr. Lisbeth Merken. She is Associate Professor of the Department of Health Psychology at the Open University of the Netherlands in Heerlen. And the second supervisor is Dr. Shahab Youlani. He is Assistant Professor of Methodology and Statistics at Maastricht University. And I will introduce the 5 opponents later during the ceremony. Welcome to the audience here in the aula, and also welcome all followers of the live stream. Mrs. Carmen Torrejón Guirado, may I invite you to present a summary of your thesis, and I wish you success in the coming hour. The floor is yours.
Thank you. Dear prorectors, dear member of Corona, dear supervisors, dear family, friends, colleagues here and online, welcome and thank you for being here today. In the next 15 minutes, I will present a short summary of the key findings of the research done during my thesis. But before we start, could you mind if I ask you a few questions? Just think along with me as I ask them. How often did you see adolescents smoking cannabis? Just weekends? At the entrance or at the exit of the school every day? Will you be able to distinguish if they are smoking a hand-rolled cigarette from tobacco from a joint of cannabis? Could you name 3 factors mainly related to cannabis use? Could these factors be different between boys and girls? When we think about these questions and the fact that cannabis use, you probably will realize that cannabis is a public health problem that needs further study. However, there is a serious problem regarding cannabis research, and this is there is not a clear definition of what is cannabis use. This makes hard to compare the study that we found, and of course it was a challenge to decide how we will measure the cannabis use in our research. Initiation and experimentation mostly happen during adolescence, a stage where adolescents are particularly vulnerable to its consequence. This is why my research focused on the adolescent population and the reasons for consuming and not consuming cannabis. Moreover, cannabis is 3.7% higher in Spanish adolescents than in the European average, and cannabis is linked to many health effects like physical effects like lung inflammation or mental effects like schizophrenia, but also is linked with societal problems like deterioration of family and friends relationships, school dropout, violence, and other consequences. All of these consequences might increase the educational and healthcare system costs, which make it important to study this topic. In Andalusia, cannabis is the main reason for adolescents being admitted to substance addiction centers, and additionally, the discussion about the legalization and potential advantages of medical use might be confusing to adolescents. These confusing messages about cannabis use might contribute to an increase of this use in this population in Andalusia. But fortunately, drug prevention during adolescence is a priority for the Andalusian government, as well as including a gender approach to prevent it. This is why I focus on the determinant of the adolescent, why they smoke or not cannabis, And if we focus also in the difference between girls and boys, we can better tailor intervention programs to the needs and the characteristics to these adolescents. Schools are a good point to reach adolescents. In Spain, nurses play an important role to promoting and maintaining the health at the schools. Moreover, nurses have been associated with successful behavior change outcome. This is a reason for this research will be important to improve the intervention leads by nurses. For nurses, it's also important to use a theoretical ground for prevention strategies. So, why will it be important to use this theoretical ground for prevention strategies? Well, sociocognitive theories aim to explain the adoption of health behaviors. They are crucial to achieve a well-structured study and implementation strategy, and they have long emphasized the importance of certain risk factors. One of these sociocognitive theories is the I-chain model, which has been used for the development of this thesis and for structure the questionnaire that we use for this research. The I-chain model pays attention to the motivational factors, and these motivational factors are determined for the predisposing factors. We will talk a bit later of this. Cannabis use takes place with a social context and time where peers play an important role. Therefore, studying how they interact with each other within their own social network is also important. However, sociocognitive theories, such as the I-chain model, do include social factors like copying behavior of others, social norms, social pressure, but they generally don't examine the more characteristic of the complex of the process of socialization, like the dynamic of social structure of friendship and the roles that the adolescents have within the social groups. To better understand this complex process of socialization, a social network approach will be needed. So to sum up, what is missing in Andalusia regarding cannabis use prevention? First, there is a limited research about factors influencing cannabis use, and most of this research have a cross-sectional study design, and they just focus on a few set of factors. Second, Andalusia prevention programs lack of a theoretical model. Third, there is no studies of gender-specific difference in cannabis use among adolescents. And finally, social network has been applied in Andalusia thus far. This brings us to the main goal of my PhD research, namely to identify the main factors related to cannabis use and using this information to make recommendations for the content of cannabis prevention intervention for Andalusia adolescents. We mainly focus on the I-chain model approach, but realizing that the importance that our previous studies found about peers, we also decided to take a social network approach. The I-chain model approach includes 3 aims. The first aim was to examine the factors associated with cannabis use. The second aim was to examine whether these factors differ between these 3 groups. And the third aim was to examine the difference in motivational factors between boys and girls. When examining predisposing factors, our results showed that adolescents scoring a lower academic performance are more likely to use cannabis. Further, we found that adolescents who have more pocket money have a greater use of cannabis. And we also found that adolescents who would like to try intense and new experience, such as skydive, are more likely to use cannabis. When we examine motivational factors, our study showed that adolescents who were less convinced of cannabis use were more likely to use cannabis. Adolescents who had peers whose norms are in favor to cannabis also were more likely to use cannabis. and those who have peers who use cannabis were more likely to use cannabis too. Having difficulties to avoid cannabis use in risk situations and moods, and having a higher intention to use cannabis also predict cannabis use. The second aim of the Einstein model approach was to look at the difference between these three groups. The first group is the non-users, who are those who didn't smoke cannabis neither at the baseline nor at the follow-up of the study at any time. The new users were those who were non-users but who became users at the follow-up. And the consistent users were the adolescents who remained users at both times. For examples, we found that new users and non-users differed the most. New users had more motivational factors favoring cannabis use than non-users. New users perceived norms and modeling favoring cannabis use from family, but mostly from peers, and they weren't sure about if they are able to refuse a cannabis offer. Additionally, new users were less convinced of the disadvantages, and they perceived peers who use cannabis more than consistent users. And finally, new users show that to have higher intention than both groups, than non-users and consistent users. The third and last aim of the Einstein model approach was to look at the difference between boys and girls. We found just difference in attitude and social influence factors. And when we look at the attitude, we saw that boys were less convinced of all of the disadvantages of cannabis use, like, for example, that cannabis can cause peer conflict, or that they feel ashamed of themselves when they use cannabis, compared to girls. However, we saw that girls were more convinced of the advantages of cannabis use, such as use it as a medication, or that cannabis could stimulate their creativity. Regarding social influence, we found that boys show slightly more norms favoring cannabis from male friends, brothers, and parents compared to girls. And boys reported that their male friends use cannabis more often than the male friends of the girls. Yet, girls reported that they had female best friend more often than the female best friend of the boys who use cannabis. Finally, for social pressure, it was found that girls felt more pressure for all of the female peers in their social environment. The second theoretical approach of this research was the social network approach. We started doing a systematic review in order to see what kind of peer influence could be related with cannabis use over time. Main network effects of the 8 included studies show that these factors lead to more own cannabis use. These effects were cannabis use of friends. The more cannabis use of the friend, the more that adolescents use cannabis. Being popular, this effect was significant in several, but not in all of the studies. And being more centrally positioned in the network, meaning that they are easily reaching many others in the network. However, our review indicates that more research is needed to clarify the peer effect on cannabis use, as it seems that it is in its early stage. So, summing up, the general conclusion of my PhD research are the following. First, a specific definition and criteria to assess cannabis use are needed in the field of adolescent prevention. Second, predisposing factors such as lower academic performance, more pocket money, and sensation-seeking personality traits might lead to an increase of cannabis use. Although these factors are hard to prevent to include in an intervention, they are important to understand cannabis use behavior. So regarding prevention programs, they need to address attitude, meaning that they have to increase the belief about the disadvantages of recreational use. They also have to increase the levels of self-efficacy, especially when cannabis is offered by peers and in the new users group, meaning that adolescents also need to be confident about their refusal skills. And finally, a reason for cannabis use might slightly be different for boys and girls. It will be important to be sensitive to this difference. Thank you for your attention, and now I would like to give the word back to the prorector.
Thank you very much for this clear summary of your thesis. The opposition will be opened by Professor Rick Gruten. He is Professor of Behavior Change and Technology at Maastricht University, and he is also Secretary of this degree committee. Professor Gruten.
Thank you very much. Dear candidate, my compliments on all your work. Very interesting explorative work on cannabis use. I also learned a lot about the specifics about the Andalusian region, so that was very interesting to read. You know, the region is very close to my heart, so that made it special. And I actually also learned a lot about you, because I saw this section that you're also very active on workshops and conferences and about a lot of topics, also beyond your thesis, so very productive person, very good. And of course, as a chair, I can also say that everybody here was positive, so that you're standing here with good reasons. Now to the questions. And I actually want to start off with, and you also touch upon that briefly in your presentation. You talk about, and I think it also reflected in one of your propositions, that you want to understand different trajectories of cannabis use. Okay, interesting, and I agree. But then you say you want to do that because you want to develop targeted prevention efforts based on risk profiles. Well, you say it's important to have a definition of cannabis use. Maybe give you also a definition. What do you mean with trajectories and what do you mean with risk profiles?
Thank you, highly esteemed opponent, for your compliments and questions. With risk profile, we meant that as the trajectories are going to have different factors influencing this kind of trajectory of this transition between non-use or use or experimental use and regular use. Yes, the meaning of the risk profile is going to be these different factors influencing the different kind of groups. And with trajectories, we are referring to the transition, to the proper transition to the cannabis use from the non-cannabis use to cannabis use, and if it's experimental or regular. But it was really challenging to decide how to manage all of the data, because the research about cannabis use many different definitions, concepts. They namely is so different, so it was a challenge. But
okay, yeah, I can understand. So, but then by trajectories, you basically mean trajectories based on use, so I can have different use patterns, and then the risk profile are, for example, that I score higher on self-efficacy or lower.
Exactly, yes.
Yeah, and is that then also changing over time, or is that some static characteristic in your view?
It can be changed because we measure a 6-month follow-up, so it can happen that in the beginning we saw in the new users, they started to being so similar to the non-users group. I mean, they have similar factors. For example, the factor of self-efficacy, they answer the same kind of the answers, but later on, after 6 months, our results found that new users changed much in a short period of time, and they were so different from the new users. So we saw that the profile were, changed.
Yeah, so that's like different at that time point, but also that then can change over time, right?
Yes, it can be.
Okay, and you said it yourself earlier on, this was very complicated and difficult, which brings me actually to the next question, because it was already difficult for you, right? In terms of figuring this out with all these data patterns and so on. What should I do with this in practice? I have to provide an intervention. How do you deal with these difficulties?
Yes, as our population are adolescents, that they can change a lot of times of the decision. I think it will be enough to maintain a prevention program for all of them, because I think it will be needed to explore during a long period if this kind of change it is maintained, or with the 6 months that we have already explored, it was enough to say if we can separate in prevention programs, of it enough of using just one program for all of them. But for the moment, just with the 6 months, I will say that one program for all of them will be enough.
Okay, but what's then the targeted part? Because you also talk about targeted prevention. What needs to be targeted in your sense?
Yes.
Your opinion.
I mean, for example, I think with that e-health opens a good a good option, or a good way to that you can tailor this kind of messages for each groups according to their needs or their risk profiles. So for one intervention, that this message can be tailoring for each characteristic will be enough.
Yeah, okay, so then you would say like really the individual level tailoring, then it's the direction you would go to use this information. All right. Now maybe there's also actually a nice bridge to the next question I have, looking at the time, and that was about chapter 4, where you talk about gender differences. And then on page 133, you zoom in on your specific recommendations. And they are, for example, about addressing the detrimental effects of cannabis use with emphasis on boys. And the same goes for providing accurate and relevant information on the attitudinal beliefs that are more pertinent to girls. Maybe the same question, how would that work in practice then?
Yes, it will be happen the same, because at the end they both groups, no? Because in one we are focused on the trajectories of cannabis use, and in the other about the gender difference. But in any case, with the tailor, I mean, for example, with a computer tailor intervention, it will be enough to approach these different characteristics that we found in our study, that they are different between these groups.
Okay, but then if you think in terms of tailoring, then you would have you have the trajectories, you have the risk profiles, and then, for example, also add gender to the equation.
To mix, yes, it will be, I know it will be complex. Yes, I know. But I will focus more on the trajectories of cannabis use, but as you could read in the book, the gender difference were they have a slightly difference between boys and girls. So
okay, so if you have to choose one short answer,
yes,
you would tailor trajectories or gender?
I will choose trajectories.
Okay, thank you very much. I'll give the word back to the...
Thank you, Professor Kutze. The next opponent is Professor Lilian Lechner. She is Professor of Health Psychology of the Open University of the Netherlands in Heerlen. Professor Lechner.
Thank you. Dear candidate, let me start with a well-earned compliment for the thoroughness of your work. In your work, you have looked at the problem of cannabis use among Andalusian youth. You did that in a very comprehensive and thorough way. In 4 studies, you have each time very systematically looked at different aspects relevant for gaining insight in these determinants and factors related to cannabis use. I think you used different designs, you used different methods and analyses, and to my opinion, you left no stone unturned, which is very good, and that deserves a well-earned compliment for you, but also for your team of who guided you. So well done. I have, of course, also some questions, and I would like to hear your opinion on that. And my questions concern chapter 3 of your thesis. First, I have a question regarding the longitudinal setup in chapter 3. There was a dropout of 45%, between the first and the second measurement. And these numbers are large, but not, you often see them within research, but still they are quite substantial. And if you look at the dropout for the second questionnaires, there are some specific characteristics of people who dropped out. And you can see that to some degree as selective dropout. So the dropouts were a bit older. They more often come from public schools and more often from families with a low socioeconomic background. And those could be factors that are related to actual cannabis use. So what do you think might have been the consequences of this dropout when you look at the results? And could the results have been different if the dropout would have been less or maybe less specific? How do you think that would have influenced your results?
Thank you, highly esteemed opponent, for your compliments and questions. Indeed, the dropout was high, higher. It has a higher percent of dropout. The main reason in that case of the research is because we did the research in the COVID pandemic. So we found that there were a lot of isolations during this period because the adolescents being positive of COVID, and they also have to be as isolated if they have been a positive contact of a person who had COVID. So this decreased the attendance of the adolescent to schools. But concretely, if I focus on these three factors that we formal analyze, regarding because there are two concrete grades that were that had more dropout than the others, and the main reason was because the Andalusian academic calendar changed in the middle of the course. So the teachers felt so stressed about their task, and they felt that they haven't enough time to do the questionnaire, the research. So they left the questionnaire, the administration of the questionnaire, for the end of the academic course. And in the last day of class, we found that it was a really low attendance of the school. I remember that I went to a school, and just 5 students out of 30 were in the class. So because one day finished the recovery exam that at the beginning, before the change of the academic calendar academic, was in September, these recovery exams, and now the recovery exams were in June, May, June, and these were the months where the follow-up took place. So this is one of the reasons that the grades were a reason for the dropout.
But what would be the consequences? What do you think was the result of that? Were results more explicit or less explicit if the non-response would have been less?
Well, I think that the sample size, it was high enough to manage the effect of the results. So I will say that the consequences were very low. They have this dropout haven't had a high impact on the results.
Because I would think that if especially people dropped out who have a higher chance of using cannabis, then probably the results would have been more explicit. Could that have been because you're missing a group? Because within the whole group of people, there was only relatively small people who actually used cannabis. So I would have suggested that maybe the results would have been more explicit then. Could have been. Could
it be because are you if I understand well you correctly, you are asking about if the results were changed for this reason of the dropout.
Well, your total results, would they have been possibly more explicit, or would differences have been bigger or stronger?
Yes, well, I think that because cannabis use is mostly related with the older people and lower academic, lower socioeconomic status, it could be increase the prevalence rate of cannabis use if we include all of the adolescents that were abandoned the study.
Okay, thank you. I have another question, and that's about the regression analysis that you did. You did 2 cross-sectional and 1 longitudinal regression analysis in table 3. I was a little bit puzzled on how you actually operationalized cannabis use, because within your method section and also within your introduction, you mentioned that it's very important to have a good operationalization because there's a lot of difference within the literature. So you're talking about 3 ways of actually measuring use. It can be dichotomous, so yes or no. It can be by frequency, so from no to a lot of categories to 20 or more, and these the 20 times or more these categories you made that to 3 groups, like no users, experimental users, and regular users. So what did you actually use within your regression? What was your dependent variable? How did you operationalize?
Yes, the dependent variable that we use in the regression analysis was the dichotomic ones, because we saw that the diversity of the other question, which measure how many days the adolescents use cannabis, have no enough variability.
Okay, so you actually used the dichotomous variable, so yes or no. That's what. Then I was a little bit, because in the table it looks like you did regression analysis. I would have expected logistic regression then.
Yes, it's true that we can. It's a limitation of the study.
Okay. And can you think if you had a combination, for example, non-users, experimental users, and users, could that have so that then you would have used a different dependent variable? Would that have results or effect on the results possibly? Because then you have a little bit more variation within the user part, because now you did users, non-users.
I think that the first step before deciding how to measure cannabis use would be to design the definition of cannabis use, because if we have this definition, we could decide much better which kind of dependent variable we are going to use. So I think it will be the first step, and then we decide the dependent variable.
Okay, thank you. I see that my time is up, so I give the word back to the prorector.
There is time for a short question if you like, and we can also move on.
Just move on. Okay.
Thank you very much, Professor Lechner. The opposition will be continued by Professor Miguel Bennassar. He is professor in epidemiology, public health and community health at the University of the Balearic Islands in Spain. Professor Bennassar.
Thank you very much, dear prorector. First of all, let me to thanks to the Maastricht University and the University of Seville for inviting me to be here, a part of the member of this degree committee. It's a pleasure to be here. I would like to congratulate the doctoral candidate. Congratulations on your work and your presentation, which has been clear and concise on such an important public health issue. I also wish to extend my congratulations to your supervisors. From my point of view, the research presented reflects a high level of quality, rigor, and originality, case aspects in a doctoral thesis, because the thesis is comprised of 4 articles, 2 of which has been published in peer-reviewed journals and high standard levels. Furthermore, the research has been funded for a peer-rigorous grant from the Spanish Ministry of Research. Thus, the research has undergone a rigorous peer review process prior to this evaluation. For this reason, I only be asking some questions. Your thesis includes a detailed table outlining the reasons of non-participation in your study. Could you provide a concise summary of the main reasons for dropout and comment potential bias or limitations in your results?
Thank you, highly esteemed opponent, for your compliments and questions. Continuing with the brief explanation that I gave about the grades that were more that we found that they were a reason for the dropout, I will say that the other factors that we formally analyzed about the students who abandoned the study at the follow-up was the public schools, and we also found that in that period, in the period that where the research was done, there was many changes of the teachers because of the COVID, and we found that when the teachers changed from a school to another school, they started to have a lot of materials that they have to teach in a shorter time. So again, they don't have the priority as a priority, the questionnaire. And of course, we also, well, under my experience, we found that the attendance of the public schools were less controlled than in the private ones. So I think it could be a reason for that the dropout in the public one was higher than in the private. And regarding the socioeconomic status, the safety measure of COVID situation could be less in this kind of population. So again, it was like a circle reason, because if they these lower socioeconomic families doesn't take into account the safety measure from COVID, they get COVID, the students doesn't come to class because of COVID, and there again. And it could be also that in the families with low economic status, the parents didn't monitor in the attendance of the children, the adolescents, to a school as much as the other kind of family. A solution for that, because we tried to insist in that they could make the questionnaire at home, because the questionnaire was online, but the engagement of the students were really low. So it was really difficult to get these students, despite of we resend emails and we try to contact with them.
This is a typical problem in these studies. Ensuring the reliability of responses in surveys can be challenging. How do you ensure the reliability of design and intervention, the reliability of responses from adolescents in your questionnaire for this typical study?
Yes, well, at the beginning of the research, the company of the questionnaire, the design of the questionnaire, gave me a training for try to avoid this kind of troubles with the trust of the adolescents. So we decided to self-administer the questionnaire, since adolescent is a population where they can feel ashamed or embarrassed to talk in public. So we thought that a self-administered questionnaire will be avoid this problem, just also because cannabis is an illegal drug in Spain, and I remember that they wanted to speak or even write about cannabis because they always have the feeling that this information are not well protected. So even if I have to explain that we made all of the data management that we have to do, they still have doubts about it. So with the self-administered questionnaire, they felt more secure than talking or verbally, I mean. We also left the demographic questions for the end. Mostly of them, the family affluence, the family function questions, the personality, self-esteem questions, all of them, they were at the end of the questionnaire. Since if you share, do you usually don't want to share your more intimate things at the beginning of a research? We also try to explain why we choose these questions, because sometimes, for example, with the socioeconomic question, the students didn't understand well why do you know if I have a computer or not for cannabis use. So we also try to explain the reason. And for example, with the cannabis question, we try to measure in both ways, with the yes/no filter, but also with the direct frequency filter, since it can avoid any kind of inconsistency, because they usually are more trusted, or they answer truly when they answer the frequency question. So they were this reason.
Okay. Based on your research highlighting the importance of the role of nursing prevention or in cannabis prevention, if you were to design an intervention, specifically a school-based intervention, which will be the key components?
Yes, well, I was reviewing the literature, and I found that World Health Organization recently published a paper where it says that there is not a clear role. I mean, there is not. The nurses don't know their clear role about how to prevent drugs in this population, but they of course have a role, and they will need a training for that, because they are in a good position of for preventing, in this case, cannabis. So I will start to making nurses aware about the importance of using a theoretical model, and helping them to choose which one theoretical model they want to pick and why. And then I will let them know why cannabis is a public health problem, and if the consequence, so they can transmit it then to adolescents. And I will also training with them the communication skills, because we have to have in mind that we have to use a different kind of language with adolescent populations. And of course, they have to have also in mind the barriers and the problems that they might find before doing their intervention with adolescents, and how they are going to evaluate this evaluation, this intervention before they started. So.
Okay, thank you very much for your answer.
Thank you, Professor Benassar. The next opponent is Dr. Ana Magdalena Fargas Martinez, and she is Associate Professor of Nursing at the University of Seville in Spain. Dr. Fargas Martinez.
Thank you very much, dear Prorector. Dear candidate, congratulations on your work and your presentation today. For me, it is a pleasure to be here today as a member of this degree committee. I also compliment your PhD team, did a wonderful job. Firstly, I would like to highlight some part of your work. Regarding the general introduction, you have articulated the justification that led you to undertake this comprehensive work. Particularly the section recapitulation of knowledge gaps is highly elucidating and beneficial for the comprehension of this thesis and this justification. In relation to a cross-sectional study, there is little more to add given the reviews you must have received from the journal where the article has been published. And regarding the longitudinal study, I would like to, it's worth mentioning that tables are very explanatory in the context of this study. And finally, regarding to chapter 4, the conclusion and recommendation provide are highly enriching for the design of future interventions in the prevention of cannabis use from a gender perspective. And I will only be asking some brief questions. In relation to cross-sectional study, what explanation do you provide for the fact that sex and age only appear significant in a model 1 when motivational factors, norms, pressure, model are not taken into account in this model?
Thank you, esteemed opponent, for your compliments and questions. Well, as there is a cross-sectional study, it's true that we can carefully interpret the data. I will say that the main factors within the model, the theoretical model that we use, comes a bit later in the model 2 and of course the model 3 when we add the motivational factors and intention that is part of it. But I will say that age and sex age and sex were the sample size was a bit different from the other studies since they were a bit older. So I think this point could be influenced the result, but as I say, the main reason could be that the motivational factors take an important role within the association between the variables and with the cannabis use.
Thank you. And well, do you know discrepancies are not in the outcome measure employed in each study in chapter 2 last year, in chapter 3 lifetime, in chapter 4 last month? What account for this difference and what conclusion can be drawn regarding the most suitable measure for future studies?
Yes, well, I will say that there is it will be necessary to mix all of the measures. Also, you have to decide which one is going to be the dependent variable. At the beginning, we measured the last years, and we changed to the lifetime cannabis use since we saw that with the last 12 months, we could overlap the measurement because it was just 6 months. So we couldn't really know if the adolescents who use cannabis in the follow-up. I mean, if we will use the last year's dependent variable as a dependent variable, we overlap this 6 months that we have already as before. So it will be for further studies. As I say, it will be nice to have a clear definition, and of course to try to mix the frequency of the use, because for the last month, for example, the last month cannabis use wouldn't be enough also to measure cannabis use, because you maybe didn't use cannabis this last month, but you did 3 months ago. So we decided to use mainly the lifetime, because it has the potential of see if the adolescents use cannabis or not in any point of their life.
Okay. So thank you very much for this answer, and I will give the floor back to the Prof.
Thank you very much, Dr. Fargas Martinez. And the fifth and last opponent is Dr. Ilse Mesters. She is Associate Professor of Clinical Epidemiology at Maastricht University. Dr. Mesters.
Thank you, Prorector. Dear candidate, at first I would like to compliment you on your very nice dissertation, and I want to include your team for achieving this result. You didn't only write a dissertation, but you also spent some time on formulating several propositions, and we cannot let them go unnoticed, right? So for this occasion, I would like to invite one of your paronyms to just read aloud Proposition 4. And as you said that Leon Kohlenberg was so supporting during this whole process, maybe he might give you a few minutes of some extra support by reading it for us. So, oh. More people have the name Leon, I guess.
Yes.
But go ahead, it's fine.
In the social network approach to understanding cannabis use, it is crucial to incorporate a broader range of peer influence effects within a well-designed longitudinal study.
Okay, thank you for reading it aloud. And then this proposition triggered 2 questions for me. Let me start with the first one. You say that it's crucial to incorporate a broader range of peer influence effects. And I thought, okay, a broader range. Can you give me a little bit more information what that entails for you? What are your thoughts with respect to a broader range?
Thank you, esteemed opponent, for your compliments and questions. We did the systematic review, and we found that in the 8 included studies, they just focus on a few peer influence during their studies. I mean, if, for example, we have different kind of peer influence effect, like popularity, network density, centrality, but most of the studies just explore 1 or 2 or a few factors, not all of the peer effect that could really influence cannabis use. So with the broad range, we wanted to transmit, to say that it will be nice, that it will be needed that all of these peer effect together were development in one study, because if you are including just a few set of factors, you cannot measure well if they are really be mediated or not with other one that they are lacking these studies.
But then you mean by the broader range, they should include more of these things in one study.
More in one.
Other things that you did not include in your study that you would like to add in the new one?
Yes, well, as it is a systematic review, I think, we found that the design of these studies, this included study, didn't follow a complete social network during the design, in the design of the study. So it will be needed to include the complete network and also to include because we saw that just 3 of the 8 included the study control for the selection effect, that they are the main confounder of this kind of analysis. So it will be a more consistent and more robust results if the further studies control for this selection effects.
You mentioned a larger network. Have you looked at online networks? It's 2024. People live online, and they have networks there as well. So have you taken a look at those networks?
Well, the design of the studies that we include were face-to-face networks in the school, at schools. They mostly were to schools where the students have to nominate a few friends, 5 friends, most of the times. So I think it could be feasible to make it online, but as my main focus was at the schools, I'm interested.
We had a CEO of Facebook in the news last week apologizing for the big influence they have on youngsters, so maybe that would be a good addition to take a look at that, maybe for the future.
It will be for sure.
But I had a second question as well, so we are not finished yet. The same proposition, but now in relation to the well-designed longitudinal study. So,
yes, with the well-designed, we found that we had to delete so many articles because they use a regression analysis or mostly regression analysis, but they don't use because within the social network approach there is a different software that you can use for measuring all of the effects, and also there is different models which you can use for measure these peer effects. So it will be, for further study, it will be important as well as to take into consideration to include the complete network for incorporate this complete network how do you say in English? The Stortiatsky model, SOM, I don't know how to pronounce well, sorry. It will be the model that could give us a better
But you also
results.
mentioned something somewhere, I think it was in your discussion, that you said something about intervals, about measurement intervals in the longitudinal studies. And you said that should change, but what changes would you then like to make in the longitudinal studies?
But
It's the intervals in which you measure things. You said something about that, but you did not make clear what intervals then would you
if I
prefer?
remember correctly, the intervals were writing for the IC model approach, who is different from the social network approach. So I'm not sure if you are asking about the.
No, I was asking about the measurement intervals of the behavior
Okay,
in the longitudinal study.
Okay. So yes, because we just have in the longitudinal study that we carry on, we just could follow this adolescent for 6 months, and it will be better to take a long period for taking a look to the factors that influence the cannabis use. So this is what I meant with the intervals.
If you allow me a last more question. I'm just kind of curious about the influence of best friends, BFFs, and romantic boys and girlfriends. So you included parents in your study. You asked them as a stakeholder. So now, if I am a parent, and I would ask you the question, which person would worry me the most? Is it the cannabis-using best friend, or the cannabis-using romantic friend, girlfriend, boyfriend? Considering the population 14 to 18 years old, what should worry me the most?
According to our results, the girls, in the case of the girls, we will most worry about a boyfriend, girlfriend, but in the case of boys, you can be more worried about just the friends. So I will say that even we found this little different, it will be better to study in deep this relation because both figured.
Yes, Mrs. Torrejón Guirado, you have seen and heard that the time for defending your thesis for a double degree of Maastricht University and the University of Seville has passed. Committee will now withdraw to discuss the quality of your thesis and in particular the quality of your defense. And I would like to ask you to remain our return with the results of our deliberation.
The PhD defense has now ended. The degree committee will debate the candidate's performance behind closed doors. This process usually takes about 10 minutes.
Long road to the south side. 10 miles in my rearview mirror, I know what it felt like. My goal's only getting clearer, east side to the west side. No place like home, if there's questions that you've got, go the extra mile and die. All your time, 'cause I'll go the extra mile. Long road to the south side, 10 miles in my rearview mirror, I know what it felt like. My goal's only getting clearer, east side to the west side. No place like home, if there's questions that you've got, go the extra mile and die. On the dash, got my laces tied. Long road, I don't waste no time. Break rules because fate decides. With the team and we chase the light. I make a move, fall down, shake it off. I hate to lose, bad branch, break it off. No room for negativity, praise and love. Prepare for deep part cause we're taking off. Take the mileage, traveling so far from home. Gathering knowledge, other connections. I put the time in to get everything I ever hoped for. It's a challenge and we all in. It's a better future that we go for. Even though these nights seem long, I know that I am never on my own. Know you won the battle once you've grown. South side, 10 miles in my rearview mirror, I know what it felt like. My goal's only getting clearer, east side to the west side. No place like home. If it's questions that you've got, go the extra mile and night. Long road to the south side, 10 miles in my rearview mirror. I know what it felt like. My goal's only getting clearer. East side to the west side. No place like home. If it's questions that you've got, go the extra mile and night. Years can't fly by now, don't waste all your time. 'Cause I'll go the extra mile.
Mrs. María del Carmen Torrejón Guirado. The degree committee has assessed the quality of your thesis and the quality of your defense, and in view of its positive verdict, the committee has decided to grant you the degree of doctor. And it's not only the degree of doctor, but it's given by two universities, the Maastricht University and the University of Seville in Spain. And also, I can announce, and your promoter will come back to that later, that they have also decided to grant you the cum laude. Professor De Vries is authorized to confer upon you this academic distinction in accordance with Dutch university custom and law, and I guess also in accordance with Spanish university custom and law. And I would like to invite the supervisor now to take the floor. Professor Hein De Vries.
Please all rise.
Yes, this is a double degree, and I'll come to that back a little bit later. But first, I want to ask you a question. It's research. Do you promise to work in accordance with the principles of scientific integrity at all times, and to be careful and honest, transparent, independent, and responsible?
Yes, I promise.
Okay. Thank you. By the authority vested in us by law, and in conformity with the decision of the committee here present, I hereby confer upon you, María del Carmen Torrejón Guirado, the degree of doctor, and grant you all rights attached by custom and law. And as evidence of this, I now present you with a degree certificate signed by the rector, the secretary, and the other members of the committee, and affixed with the official seal of the university. And what's also noteworthy is that it's referring to both universities, because it's a double degree. Yes, Carmen, there you are, doctor. And it's a double degree, which is quite an interesting procedure, not only for you, but also for us. As you could have noticed, the deliberation took a little bit longer because we also had to sign in the forms, and the University of Seville has different rules as the University of Maastricht. But as for the University of Seville, you also got the cum laude, which I think is very well showing all the efforts that you've done. And I just want to speak very briefly in this laudatio because Marta will take over. But one of the things that really has struck me is your perseverance, because it was not an easy topic. You have a different background coming from nurse, and all of a sudden you had to become involved and become knowledgeable about health communication, health promotion, health psychology, all these stupid models. And then also we had COVID, and well, what can you expect? How do you recruit people in schools? Originally you had planned 12 months, but of course that wasn't possible. So we had to change quite a lot. And I can remember the multiple discussions that we had, also the multiple types of analysis, both logistic regression, considering other approaches, and so on and so on. Sometimes, we both got really fed up with the whole situation, but You always kept on smiling. I think I want to compliment you for that. It was a pleasure to work with you. It was a pleasure to work with the team from Seville. I really thank the University of Seville to give us, the Maastricht University to give us this possibility. I want to thank the supervision team, of course, with all the people. It couldn't have been done like this, the corona over here, and in particular, of course, Marta, who has made this possible. And finalmente también gustaría agradecer, felicitar a la otra gente, invitarla a la recepción después y espero que estamos en contacto después también. Y muchísimas gracias.
Okay. Thank you. I would like to thank, first of all, to the Prorector and to the Corona Committee the opportunity to do these laudatory remarks, and of course to thanks and congratulate to my my team, the supervisor team. Today is an honor and a privilege for me to stand before you and express my admiration to an exceptional individual who is Doctora María del Carmen Torrejón Guirado. As her mentor, I witnessed her remarkable journey, and I'm delighted to celebrate the act of today. I first encountered María Carmen Torrejón during her undergraduate studies in nursing. I see her innate curiosity and quiet determination that caught my attention. Despite her initial shyness, it was evident she possessed a fighting spirit and a deep-seated desire to overcome any challenge that came her way. Her dedication, her pursuit for her dreams, her passion for nursing, prevention, research were evident from the beginning. It was not easy, this doctoral journey, especially given she was to face with the COVID pandemic. It was very hard. Nevertheless, she was resilient and she was fighting with this situation. And finally, her doctoral research was the first longitudinal study on the determinant of cannabis use in adolescents and in Andalusian adolescents. María Carmen is an enthusiastic person. She loved nursing, loved research. She contributed to the advance of the knowledge in our area, especially in the area of prevention of drug use in Andalusia, in adolescents, and especially contribute to the school nursing, which is an area that we love. With numerous obstacles, finally she overcome the challenge. Now she has the well-deserved title of doctora. For me, it's an honor. I really accomplished your achievements. I am proud of you achieve the sufficiency investigadora with your doctoral thesis. I also want to congratulate to the family, to the friends, all the people that support you during this journey. Congratulate and applaud to you, María Carmen. Enhorabuena. is on. Okay, so thank you.
Esteemed Dr. Torrejón Guirado, dear Carmen, it's a great pleasure to congratulate you with your doctorate, with your double doctorate. And I do that also on behalf of Maastricht University, and of course also on behalf of the University of Seville. I would like to share some impressions with you with respect to your thesis and with respect to your defense. We have critically read your thesis, and that covers an interesting and also a very relevant topic. And we have seen that it is of excellent quality. With respect to your defense, we clearly saw that you have demonstrated that you are knowledgeable about the scientific background of your studies. And of course, we take into account that there are language barriers, but we are very satisfied with your excellent defense. And I'm not only congratulating you with that result, but also your 4 supervisors, Professor Heide Vries, Dr. Marta Lima Serrano, Dr. Lisbeth Merke, and Dr. Shahab Yordani. Congratulations with this result that we have seen in the form of a thesis and the publications and an excellent defense. I would like to thank first of all, I would like to include in my congratulations your partner, your family, your parents, and other members of your family. And I think that you will certainly be proud of what has been demonstrated today. I would like to include in my congratulations also your colleagues, your friends, and other people that are involved in the construction of your thesis and the publications. I would like to thank all the members of both committees, the Thesis Assessment Committee and also members of this degree committee, and in particular I would like to thank the external members of the committee. And I would like to say that Maastricht University is very thankful to you and for your critical reading of the manuscript and for all the critical questions that we have heard during the defense and the opposition. Before I close this academic ceremony, I would like to ask the audience here in the aula to stay while we are leaving this aula. We will take a picture with you in the middle, and I would like to invite your close family to join us for that picture. And after this academic ceremony, there is a reception in the rafter. Not easy, not difficult to find, quite easy. The beadle will show you how to go after the elevator, then you will reach the rafter. Hereby I close this academic ceremony.